In the year 2471, the silence of space was broken not by sound, but by something stranger, an invisible wave rippling through the edges of the solar system. Humanity's deep space satellites, orbiting far beyond Pluto, detected it first. Distortion, unlike anything ever recorded, moved faster than anything natural or man-made, bending time and light as it raced toward the heart of the system. No signal, no energy readings, just a dark blur in the void, coming straight for Earth. Within minutes, alerts flashed across every major defense outpost. Alarms screamed silently in the control rooms of Earth's orbital command centers. At the United Earth Council's headquarters in Geneva Orbital Station, leaders and scientists gathered with wide eyes and dry throats. It wasn't a comet. It wasn't debris. It was controlled, too precise to be random. But its origin? Unknown. For all their advanced technology and thousands of years of data, humanity had nothing that matched what the sensors now showed. The Psi Council, cautious but alarmed, activated the planetary defense grid, placing every station, drone fleet, and AI sentinel on standby. Shields charged, weapons primed. And somewhere in the darkness of the Kuiper Belt, a hidden fleet stirred for the first time in decades. Admiral Kira Lorne had been retired for 10 years, living quietly on a Martian sky farm, far from politics and war. She had seen too much during the Outer Rim Wars, battles fought in silence and blood, where entire colonies had vanished into the black. Her body bore the marks of war, and her mind, the memories. But when the Council's emergency call came, she didn't hesitate. Within hours, she was aboard the Resolute, her old command ship, newly restored and humming with power. Her return sparked whispers across the fleet. If Kira was back, it meant the threat was real. As the object approached Saturn, it slowed. Not gradually, like a falling stone, but with unnatural precision. Its deceleration was measured, exact, like it was observing, choosing. Massive telescopes locked onto it, but light bent around its surface, refusing to reveal its form. It didn't look like a ship or a station. It was more like a hole in space, moving with quiet purpose. Kira watched the data streams in the ship's command center, her eyes sharp and unreadable. The object hadn't made contact, hadn't answered hails, hadn't even blinked. Still, she ordered her fleet to hold fire. "Not yet," she said, voice calm but cold. "Let it show its hand first." Across the solar system, tension tightened like a drawn wire. Civilian stations were evacuated. Underground cities on Earth went into lockdown. The media was silent, censored by global law during cosmic emergencies. But people knew something was wrong. The stars didn't feel safe anymore. Kira met with her top officers, including young Commander Juno Malik, a brilliant strategist born decades after the last war. They studied the object's movement, speed, and silence. It wasn't just approaching. It was watching, probing, like a deep-sea predator circling unfamiliar prey. The question echoed in every room. Why here? Why now? And then, just as suddenly as it had come, the object stopped. It hovered near Titan, Saturn's largest moon, without touching down or sending a signal. Its presence disrupted communications across several satellites, but not enough to suggest aggression, only interference. It was a quiet challenge, a silent test. And for a species like humanity, who had clawed their way back from ruin more than once, it was a familiar feeling, the edge of something enormous. Kira stood before the viewing deck of the Resolute, hands behind her back, eyes fixed on the growing distortion. She felt the weight of every life in the solar system pressing on her shoulders. Earth was no longer young. It had learned from every scar and mistake. If this was another trial, then humanity would face it not with fear, but with fire ready, and... Yet, for now, she waited. Because the first move would not be humanity's. But the response, when it came, would be unforgettable. For hours, the alien object remained silent near Titan, unmoving, unblinking, as if listening. Then, without warning, every major communication system across Earth, Mars, and the Moon was interrupted by a single broadcast. It wasn't noise or static, but a voice, cold, clear, and without emotion. The message was simple. Surrender. Your system. Non-compliance will result in swift pacification. The voice did not offer peace, negotiation, or understanding. It carried no sense of curiosity or welcome. It was a command, and behind it, the chilling certainty of those who had delivered such ultimatums many times before. The translation software worked instantly, and the language shifted into every human tongue at once. Across the colonies and stations, people paused to listen. It wasn't just a threat, it was a declaration. The sender identified itself as the Tyrassian Directive, a name unknown to most of humanity but whispered in the records of deep space explorers and rogue traders who never returned. Within the greater galaxy, the Tyrassians were ancient beings, known not for conquest, but control. They claimed to preserve peace, but their peace came at a high price. Freedom, identity, even thought. Where they ruled, resistance was erased, and order was all that remained. Earth, they believed, was just another unclaimed system, a weak one, recovering, easy to subdue. But the Tyrassians had made a mistake. They had believed the stories, the myths that Earth was still damaged from its ancient wars, that its people were fractured and fearful, still crawling from the ashes of a planet nearly lost. They didn't know the truth. Humanity had rebuilt, itself not as a show of weakness, but as a strategy. Behind peaceful trade missions and quiet diplomacy, Earth had hidden its real power, disguising its military strength and technology under layers of regulation and secrecy. Every battle in the past had been a lesson. Every scar was now a weapon waiting to be used. Earth was not unprepared. It was simply waiting for a reason. On board the Resolute, Admiral Kira Lorne stood in the command center as the alien message echoed through the ship's walls. The bridge crew watched her, waiting for her answer. She didn't hesitate. Her reply was short, but every word felt like a storm about to break. This is not a colony. This is our home. Come and see what happens when a cornered species fights back. The message was sent not only to the alien ship, but across the galaxy, carried on secure human channels designed to leak in just the right places. Let them all hear it. Let the Tyrassians and their watchers know humanity was not what they thought. Across Earth's defense networks, protocols were unlocked. Orbital cannons entered a higher state of readiness. AI-controlled fleets awoke from deep code slumber. Hidden stations, camouflaged within asteroid fields, began shifting into position. On Mars, deep within the Red Mountains, factories produced weapons designed for wars no one ever wanted to fight. Humanity had prepared for this day, not because they sought war, but because they remembered too well what it was like to be weak. And now they would not kneel again. Still, there was silence from the alien ship. It did not answer, did not react. But something had changed. The distortion around it deepened, and the light from Saturn's rings bent more sharply. It was watching, recording, thinking, perhaps even surprised. For centuries, the Tyrassian Directive had subdued dozens of species with a single warning. But Earth had replied not with fear, but with defiance. Far from the Sol system, across the stars, others listened too. The galactic community, ancient. Empires, hidden civilizations, silent observers, heard the human message. Some were curious, some were afraid. And a few remembered the old tales, the ones that said humanity, when pushed too far, did not surrender. They transformed. Back on the Resolute, Kira watched the stars with calm eyes. The first move had been made. Now, it was only a matter of who would strike next. The silence after the message was brief. Days later, the Terrassian directive responded, not with more words, but with force. Without warning, a vanguard fleet appeared just beyond Neptune's orbit, their ships cutting through the darkness like blades of metal and light. Sleek, silver, and massive in number, they moved in perfect formation, confident in their strength. The Tyrassians did not consider this an invasion. To them, it was routine, a simple display of control, a quiet reminder that resistance was not tolerated. But something unexpected happened. As the fleet reached Neptune's orbit, the ship slowed, then stopped. No signals followed, no warnings, no calls for support. Then, silence. Total. Every ship in the fleet vanished. Completely. There were no explosions, no energy readings, no fragments drifting in space. One moment, they existed. The next, they were gone. Across the galaxy, panic and confusion spread quickly. News of the disappearance leaked through trade routes and secret channels. The galactic community, made of old empires and cautious observers, reacted with disbelief. Whispers filled space stations and embassies. What had Earth done? Some claimed humanity had used forbidden technology, something lost from the time before recorded history. Others believed Earth had made a deal with something darker, perhaps a hidden power sleeping in the void. Even the oldest species, those who had watched from afar for centuries, now shifted in their seats. The fear wasn't just about the missing fleet, it was the possibility that the humans had never been weak at all. And for those who had ignored Earth, assuming it to be nothing, more than a stubborn, recovering world, the message was clear. They had miscalculated. Back in the Sol system, Earth remained quiet. No celebration, no gloating. Just the same silence as before, but now heavier. On the Resolute, Admiral Kira Lorne stood before a tactical display showing an empty part of space where the enemy had once been. She knew the truth, though few did. The defense system that had erased the Terrassian fleet had no name, no flag. It was not a single weapon, but a network, vast, hidden, and terrifying in its design. Built over centuries in secret, scattered across moons, space stations, and disguised satellites, this system was the result of human fear, ambition, and genius. It was powered by quantum artificial intelligence, faster than any known signal, able to predict, adapt, and strike before the enemy knew they were being watched. And at its heart were the black hole munitions, unstable, collapsing spheres of gravity designed to erase matter instantly without leaving a trace. These were weapons humanity never wanted to use. They were created not for conquest, but for the last stand, when diplomacy failed, when survival demanded more than words. Kira had hoped they would remain hidden, sleeping beneath the cold stars. But hope was fading fast, and reality was knocking harder with each passing hour. Even now, across Mars and the asteroid belts, other parts of the defense grid were activating, preparing for what might come next. Humanity had waited too long, trusted too much, and now, the galaxy had seen the edge of its teeth. In quiet corners of distant systems, some praised Earth's silence and strength. Others planned to avoid Sol entirely. But not all were convinced. A few powerful factions believed Earth was bluffing, or worse, arming for an attack. And in the shadows of old alliances, discussions turned to defense, to retaliation, and even to preemptive strikes. The fear was spreading, not just of what humanity had done, but of what it might do next. On Earth, the people carried on, unaware of the full scale of what had begun. They trusted their leaders, their defenses, and their long memory of hardship. But above them, among the stars, war had already whispered its arrival, and the echoes would only grow louder. The galaxy waited, holding its breath in the stillness, after the Terrassian fleet vanished. No one truly knew what would come next, but everyone sensed something bigger was moving beneath the surface. Earth had not spoken since the incident at Neptune. There were no messages, no warnings, no signs of fear or pride, just silence, like a storm building behind calm skies. And then it happened. Far beyond the edges of human territory, on the dark border of Terrassian space, there was a flash of white light. It didn't ripple or explode. It simply erased. A moon-sized outpost belonging to the Terrassian Directive, used for surveillance and military planning, vanished from existence in a single moment. The light that followed was strange and quiet, as if reality itself had been pulled inside out. No alarms were triggered, no escape pods launched, just silence, followed by nothing. The outpost had been there for centuries. Now, not even dust remained. Observers from nearby systems who caught the edge of the blast called it unnatural, something that bent time and space in ways even the oldest empires didn't fully understand. Some claimed they saw the stars around it flicker. Others believed the light came from a place outside the known universe. But the truth was far simpler and far more human. The weapon used was codenamed Bellringer, a secret Earth prototype created not for war, but for deterrence. Built deep beneath the crust of Luna, it had remained hidden for nearly a century, sealed by fail-safe codes known only to a few within Earth's top military command. Designed as a last resort, Bellringer did not fire missiles or beams. It manipulated gravitational fields, folding matter into a compact point before releasing it into non-existence. It was not an attack, but a demonstration, a message. And it had been sent with great care. Across the galaxy, the response was immediate and chaotic. Within hours, ancient powers that had not moved in millennia stirred awake. The Narihan choirs, once rulers of the Starfold arm, began recalling their fleets. The crystalline monarchs of the Velthohar, long hidden in silence, sent encrypted probes toward Earth's edge. Some species watched with fear, others with admiration. A few, driven by greed or desperation, began wondering if Earth's power could be copied or controlled. But amid the whispers and questions, one truth rose above the noise. Humanity was not bluffing. On board the Resolute, Admiral Kira Lorne stood before her crew as the footage of the outpost's erasure played in silent loop. She knew the cost of such a move. It would not bring peace. It would bring eyes. Some of those eyes might be curious, but others would see Earth as a threat that needed to be silenced. Still, she had no regrets. Earth had waited too long to be taken seriously. Now it would no longer be ignored. The broadcast followed soon after. It was sent on open galactic frequencies, translated into over 3,000 languages and formats. The message was brief, spoken not by a politician, but by a calm, artificial voice built to be neutral and clear. We are not a threat unless threatened. This is your only warning. No arrogance, no hatred, just a statement of boundaries. The message spread like fire through the stars. It reached corners of the galaxy that had never heard Earth's name before. Civilizations that once saw humanity as a lesser species now rethought their stance. On trade worlds and embassy stations, alliances shifted overnight. Diplomatic envoys were rerouted. Military plans were rewritten. For some, Earth had just become too dangerous to confront. For others, it had become too valuable to ignore. But on Earth, there were no celebrations. The people continued with quiet purpose, aware that the warning had been sent not for victory, but survival. The leaders knew what might come next. The Tyrassians were wounded, but not broken, and others, more dangerous than them, might now be watching closely. Still, humanity would not step back. They had drawn their line in the stars. And if anyone crossed it, the echo of Bellringer would not be the last thing they heard. In the deepest reaches of the galaxy, far from stars and light, hidden inside a station older than most civilizations, the Galactic Concord gathered. Known only in whispers and legends, this secretive group had shaped the fate of entire star systems for thousands of years. They were not warriors or conquerors, but manipulators, masters of diplomacy, shadow, and quiet control. Their goal had always been peace, but peace maintained by quiet pressure, careful interference, and invisible strings. Few knew they even existed. Fewer still ever met them. But now, for the first time in their long rule, they were afraid. The disappearance of the Tyrassian fleet, the destruction of the outpost, and the message sent by Earth had shaken their illusion of control. They had kept balance by influencing weak leaders and guiding naive civilizations. But Earth was different. It had not asked for a place at the table. It had demanded respect without bowing. And worse, it had backed that demand with terrifying proof. The council called an emergency session inside their hidden chamber, a dark place built of ancient stone and shimmering energy. Each member, alien, machine, or something between, appeared, through holograms, refusing to risk direct presence. Their voices were calm, but tension pulsed beneath every word. They debated, speculated, and accused. Some wanted to remove Earth before it became a greater threat. Others warned that action could cause a war they would not survive. In the end, a decision was made. Earth must be brought into the fold, but carefully. If force could not be used, then perhaps words could. And so, Admiral Kira Lorne received an invitation not given in centuries. The Resolute was escorted by cloaked vessels through invisible pathways to the Council's secret location. Her crew was not allowed to follow. She entered alone, wearing no armor, carrying no weapon, only the quiet strength of someone who had faced death before and refused to blink. As she stepped into the central chamber, the members of the council studied her in silence. Some looked like light. Others resembled shadows. One was a voice carried by air. All of them were ancient, powerful, and unaccustomed to defiance. Yet there Kira stood, unshaken. They asked her questions, disguised as concern. Why had Earth attacked? Why? Had they hidden their strength? What did humanity truly want? Kira listened to their carefully chosen words, understanding the real message beneath. They wanted to know if Earth could be controlled, and when she finally spoke, her voice echoed with calm certainty. "We learned war from ourselves," she said, eyes meeting the glowing forms before her. "We learned survival from space. Every battle we've fought taught us pain, patience, and purpose. We built peace with scars, not illusions. If you force us to choose again, we will choose war, and this time we won't lose." The room fell silent. No one interrupted. No one dared. She had not raised her voice. She had not threatened. She had simply told the truth, and it was more powerful than any weapon. The council did not reply directly. They thanked her for her presence, a signal that the session was over. She turned and walked away, never looking back. But as she left, the shadows whispered among themselves. Some now respected Earth, some feared it, a few still plotted quietly. But one truth had settled deep within them all. Humanity was not to be moved like a piece on a board. It was now a player. Back on the Resolute, as the ship returned to known space, Kira looked out at the stars. She knew what her words meant. They were not an end, but a beginning. The galaxy had listened. And now, every action that followed would be watched more closely than ever before. Earth had stepped into the light, and the shadows would never forget it. The Terrasians had heard Earth's warning. They had seen the outpost vanish, witnessed the silence after their vanguard disappeared near Neptune, and watched the galaxy shift its attention toward humanity. But instead of retreating or reconsidering, they responded with pride. For a species built on dominance and fear, the idea of losing to a younger, less experienced race was impossible to accept. So they came, not with scouts or diplomats, but with their main fleet, 40,000 ships strong, led by their high commanders and armed with technology that had conquered 100 worlds. The sky above the solar system darkened as their armada broke through the outer defenses, moving with precision and confidence. They believed Earth would break under pressure, that the humans had shown all their tricks too early. But they were wrong. From the moment the Terrasians entered the system, Earth responded with speed and calm. The Sol defense network lit up with silent signals as thousands of hidden stations, stealth satellites, and drone fleets activated. Humanity had built more than just walls. They had created a living defense system. Their ships were not just machines, but extensions of human minds, powered by neural battle nets that linked captains to artificial intelligence cores in real time. Commands were given and executed before enemies could react. Entire squadrons moved like one body, striking with accuracy that felt almost impossible. Self-replicating warships, produced in deep space foundries, poured into the battle zone without pause. These machines could repair and multiply during combat, adapting to enemy weapons in minutes. Above the sun, solar lens cannons opened fire, channeling the star's energy into focused beams that cut through enemy hulls like paper. The first wave of Terrasian ships was shattered within minutes, but they didn't stop. Their pride wouldn't let them. More and more ships poured in, turning the space between Mars and Jupiter into a storm of fire and metal. The battle lasted for hours, then days. It became the largest space conflict in recorded history. Debris fields the size of continents drifted in orbit, and planets trembled as energy waves swept through space. But humanity held the line. Every time the Terrasians adjusted their tactics, Earth's systems adapted faster. Their own pride became their weakness. They underestimated human patience, underestimated how well a species could fight when everything was at risk. Bit by bit, the Terrasian fleet was broken, not just destroyed, but dismantled, taken apart by coordinated attacks that left no path of escape. Their command ships were boarded by remote units. Their communication links were jammed and turned against them. And their fleet, which once ruled stars, was reduced to drifting silence. And yet, when the last of the enemy ships powered down, surrendering or floating helpless in orbit, Earth did not finish them off. Instead, they offered safe passage to the survivors. Ships without weapons, crews without leaders. The message that followed was broadcast across the system and into the wider galaxy. It was simple, but powerful. Remember who gave you mercy. It wasn't a demand or a threat, but a reminder. Humanity did not seek destruction. They only fought when forced. But when they did, they fought with everything they had. And when the battle was done, they still chose honor over revenge. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. News of the battle spread across systems in waves. The Terrasians, once feared, were no longer untouchable. And Earth, once overlooked, was now recognized as a power no one could ignore. But for Admiral Kira Lorne and the commanders of Earth's fleet, there was no celebration. They knew the cost of victory. The skies were filled with wreckage, and many brave souls had been lost. Yet humanity had survived once again, not by chance, but by strength, unity, and the fire of those who refused to kneel. Now, the stars were quiet, but the message remained clear. Earth had faced the fire and emerged unburned. In the quiet that followed the greatest war the galaxy had seen in centuries, there was no cheering, no celebration, no rush to claim territory. Humanity did not conquer the stars it had defended so fiercely. It did not send ships to occupy the remains of the Terrasian Empire or expand its reach across frightened worlds. Instead, Earth looked out at the galaxy and chose something different, something far more powerful than victory. At the very edge of known space, Where stars grew dim and silence ruled, humanity built a monument. It was not a statue or a flag. It was a warning, a ring of pulsars, arranged in a precise formation across light years, each one carefully tuned to pulse a repeating signal. It was not aggressive. It was not hostile. It simply spoke, across the void, in thousands of languages, to every species capable of listening. The message was clear and impossible to misunderstand. Do not provoke us again. These words, echoed through the stars, written in energy and light, a permanent reminder etched into the fabric of space. The monument became known as the Line in the Stars. Ships that passed near it slowed. Captains kept their distance. Scientists studied its design, marveled at the engineering, and feared the simplicity of its meaning. It was not just a message of strength. It was a message of restraint. Earth had proven what it was capable of, but had no desire to dominate. And that, more than anything, frightened the galaxy. The most dangerous species was not the one that destroyed for pleasure, or the one that conquered for resources. It was the one that only fought when forced, and never lost when it did. Across star systems, councils and rulers met in secret to reconsider their strategies. Old alliances were rewritten. Entire generations of leaders who once ignored or dismissed humanity now studied it with cautious respect. Trade offers increased, diplomatic requests poured in, and observers were sent to understand Earth's strange balance of power and peace, but Earth accepted only a few. It remained distant, focused not on conquest, but on growth, on understanding the universe it had once feared. The wounds of past wars still ran deep, and humanity had not forgotten them. But now, for the first time, it no longer looked up at the stars with uncertainty. The fear that once haunted Earth's history, the fear of being alone, of being weak, was gone. They had stood against one of the oldest galactic powers and had not only survived, but left behind a mark that would never fade. Admiral Kira Lorne retired once more, not to escape the world, but to watch it heal. From her home on a quiet moon, circling Saturn, she watched the stars each night, knowing they now looked back with new eyes. The fleets returned to silence, the defense systems powered down to stand by, and the weapons hidden deep once again. But everyone knew they were still there, quiet, patient, and waiting if ever needed. Earth had no desire for war, but it had made a promise. Never again would it kneel. And in the hearts of other species, something else began to grow. Not just fear, but understanding. Humanity was not the strongest in raw power. It did not have the most advanced ships or the oldest civilizations. But it had something none could measure: a relentless will to survive, to adapt, to rise again no matter the cost. That will had changed the course of galactic history. Now, when the stars whispered in fear, they spoke not of monsters or tyrants, but of the world that had stood alone, faced down extinction, and answered not with surrender, but with fire and resolve. And they remembered the one truth that had rewritten the galaxy's future forever. Humanity is not alone, and it is no longer afraid.